Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Thomas Friemel. I'm from the University of Zurich, currently visiting Edinburgh School in Philadelphia. And so because this is all very close by here, I came to Chicago for a conference and also had the ability to arrange this talk here. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to present something on work in progress about impersonal knowledge networks of public opinion. So these are not final results or whatever, but so I'm also really interested in your feedback on what you think about it. Please give me some really critical feedback. I'd rather stop this project now than in 5 years. So you're going to tell me, well, this is all. Oh, no, sorry, this word I shouldn't say. It's I was told I have to be careful with my wording, so it's project speed. And so tell me, please, today, so I can form with another talk. Okay, who had seen this before? We went around the press in the whole world. Yeah, sorry? You know, would you like to say something about it? Or? Minarets. Yeah. Yeah. How do you say it in English? Is minarets? It's like the, yeah. Okay, so in Switzerland we have a direct democratic system. That means we're not only electing our government or parliament, we have to decide around 4 times a year on very specific new laws, questions, and one of these decisions was last year in November about a new law which prohibited the building of new minarets in Switzerland. Well, how many minarets do you think were built in the last 50 years in Switzerland? Yes. One, okay. More? I think it's more. There were 4. So it's really a huge problem. Okay? Of course, this was an initiative by a right-wing party, so they can collect like signatures from people, and when they have 100,000 signatures, they can hand in like this initiative for a new law, and everybody has to decide on that. And that happened so with this minaret. And the polling before the decision were actually quite clear. There were like only 35% were saying yes, we want this new law, and more than half of the people said no, we're not going to vote for this. 14% was 2 months before the vote. 14% were undecided at this time. In October, it looked pretty much the same, and this is quite a clear picture actually for saying no, we're not going to accept this new law. And well, as you already mentioned it, this law passed. So what happened? Just within like 2-3 weeks, we had this dramatic change from 34% to 58% people for this law. So we have here a gap of 24%. 24% people changed their mind within this time frame, or they just didn't get like the true answer here in the polling before. This caused a huge controversy in Switzerland about this polling and whether it's meaningful to collect this kind of data, and they stopped for a while to make this kind of information available to the public, because they thought, well, we'll have to investigate this first. What it showed to me is that we have quite a problem still to capture somehow public opinion and voting behavior. Individual opinion, public opinion, voting behavior. When we think about an ideal voter in a deliberative democracy, we have individuals, they have knowledge, And like the standard assumption is knowledge leads to opinion, people make informed decision, and based on their opinion, they're going to vote. Okay, this is on a micro scale. On the macro scale, we can think of what we have in society. We have information provided mostly by mass media nowadays. We have information provided that enables a deliberative process. So it leads the democratic theory, and then we have legitimation of decision. It's all about legitimation. Okay, well, the ways that is directly, we should probably present like this. Information from mass media should lead to knowledge of individuals. Informed people, they will discuss with each other. The deliberation process will lead to the formation of their opinion. And finally, by the votes, this leads to a legitimation. But of course, this has to be somehow linked. Based in democratic theory, legitimation only derives from informed decisions. They have to be informed. They have to have knowledge. I'm currently attending these days a meeting, the AA4 Association of American Association of Public Opinion Research, which is at these days downtown. And yesterday there were some presentations also about political knowledge, and there were quite dramatic words sometimes, or examples of people, how bad people are informed about political decisions, about who's in which position in government, and so forth. So we also have here a problem in this whole research. How are knowledge and opinions, how are these connected? Because if you would have been informed about this Minaret initiative law in Switzerland, probably no one would have accepted the new law, because it didn't include much new. When you want to build a Minaret, you already have to handle like a very complicated process. There's so many ways you can say no to someone building a new minaret, so it's not really important to have this law. It was more about like a general fear of this other people, of Muslims, of Arabic culture. Okay, so we have two big problems here, and I want to approach specifically here this area of knowledge and opinion. I'm not going to try to distinguish these two, because I think that they are quite strongly interrelated. This is what the research showed so far. So what I was going to do, I asked people about what comes to your mind when you think about specific issues. Unfortunately, I haven't collected data on the Minaret initiative. It would have been very interesting. I collected my data before. But on a related topic, it was about asylum seekers. Asylum seekers come to Switzerland. It's also something which has to do with foreign people, with a lot of emotions, of course. Okay, so I ask people what comes to your mind, and they say me different things, which are, to a certain part, their knowledge, to a certain part, their opinions. So it's like their attitude against like a specific issue. And by doing so with many people, this is what I'm going to present to you today, is the idea of constructing these impersonal knowledge networks. So what I do is I try to capture personal knowledge networks by asking people what comes to your mind when you think about asylum seekers, three-word association, and then combine these personal knowledge networks to like a big cloud of impersonal knowledge networks. That's the basic idea. But let me give you some information about the law I've analyzed. There was 2 years ago the vote on a more restrictive asylum law. And I was happy to collect data in a panel design. We telephone interviewed people in Switzerland, representative in all over Switzerland, and this is what they were saying, what they're going to decide on this new law. More than half said it was 2 months in advance, the first wave. 1.5 said, well, they're going to vote for this new law. And this was pretty stable over time, as you can see. And also, our question, how have you voted after the vote was quite close also to the official result. So we don't have this huge gap of 24%, luckily here. Okay, so this is like what was going on here. Not so controversial like the Minaret initiative, but still it was heavily discussed in Switzerland. Well, when you ask people what comes to your mind when you think about asylum seekers, they come up with like very, very diverse answers. Say, well, Switzerland is attractive for them. They rather come to us and not go to Italy because we treat them better. They're haunted people. Some say something about the origin of the people. You mentioned countries, Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan people are, there's a quite big group of Sri Lankan people in Switzerland. Some just say, well, it has too many. Too many. Misuse. There was a very strong argument of the right-wing party. Well, there's misuse. We're happy to help, like, the people who are really in need, but all this misuse, we'll have to stop this misuse. So we have to tighten this law. Refugees, so just like synonyms, when they think about asylum seekers, they think about refugees, or they mention humanitarian tradition of Switzerland. So a very diverse set of answers. What they then did was to develop a coding scheme, a hierarchical coding scheme, to recode all these answers, and came up with 176 topic aspects, which belong to like more 30 general topics. And on a most general level, you can combine them into 4 different frames and 1 residual group. I'm going to show you how this looks like. Here just some descriptives about the frequencies. The referendum, so here are the frames, referendum itself, the society, effects on the society, like, well, they cost us so much. The candidates, where they're coming from, regulation, well, we should give them more money or less money, and miscellaneous, such as the rest of the answers. As you can see here, the proportion of people mentioning the referendum were quite low in the beginning. It was 2 months before the vote was, so people, they were not like easily saying, well, there's a referendum about it when you mention asylum seekers. But it became more prevalent, of course, during the whole process. So the whole referendum became more like a top-of-mind issue. The effects on society was pretty stable. Description of candidates declined a little bit over time. Regulation, what it was actually about, surprisingly also went down over time. So even though a new law is about regulation, about how you should treat these people, it wasn't really like becoming more important for people to think about. As you can see, it's the total number of interviewed people. we had in the end of this 1,725 persons interviewed in the first wave, we had still 1,000 at the last wave. The next analysis I'm going to present to you reviews only analyzed those people who answered the question whether they would vote for or against the new law. All those which have missing in there just eliminated to have like a more consistent language. As you can see, there were around 8,000 answers we had to recode into this 176. Yes.
You put candidate there. Is there an election at the same time, or is that more about candidates?
No, actually, we should probably would be better to write at the asylum seekers, the candidates to apply for asylum. Sorry. Okay. When we look at the frequencies, what people mention is that the referendum frame in here, there were things like the political players, so who's involved in the different parties, like the head of the parties, government, and so forth. The political process, this was an issue specifically mentioned by the left-wing people, that they say, well, I don't like this whole political discussion. This is no good. This is not like on a good political level. This is really poor quality of discussion going on. Referendum results, consequences. These two, as you can see, they were not mentioned, of course, in the first two waves. People were not able to refer to the results, of course, but they did so in the last wave. So it was 2 months in advance, 1 month in advance, or just right after the vote. Basically. The frame of Swiss society, the top things here were like image, mood, and values. Values also, this included like human rights, really basic values to this whole topic of asylum seekers. Effects on Swiss society, culturally meant economy and job market, so the effect in a more economic meaning, the national budget. Switzerland is an asylum country compared to other countries. Own experiences. So you can see none, well, in this analysis, none of the person mentioned like a personal experience with an asylum seeker. You would say, assume that when you have a personal experience, like maybe you met once a person had a positive or negative experience, you would answer like I had a good experience, I had a bad experience with them personally. But so as you can see, people on this topic learn most from the mass media or just by like whatever discussing with their friends. Very little have personal experience with asylum seekers or mention it at least in when you ask them. Candidates frame, so the asylum seekers frame, here we have the background of migration, so they are coming from conflict zones, which countries they're coming from, and so forth. Then big issue, the number of asylum seekers, as you can imagine. Switzerland is a small country, many people are afraid, well, so many people coming to our little country, and how we can handle that. So the numbers was an important issue throughout the campaign. Characteristics of asylum seekers, like they're nice, they're stink, or they're whatever. Delinquency. Origin of the asylum seekers was a separate category. Okay, and then synonyms, emotions. Well, people sometimes just said like, well, I'm afraid. So we coded it in here in that emotions. And finally, the biggest frame was regulation. selection problem was the issue how you can decide who is eligible to get an asylum in Switzerland, who not, what kind of categories do you apply to this decision. Misuse, and this kind of treatment and execution, change necessary. It was just a very general question. We have to do something about it. ID problem is maybe not self-explaining. That is, there was a part of the new law was that you only can apply for asylum when you have an ID or a passport. And as you can imagine, those people who have to flee in the most dramatic circumstances, they probably don't have a passport or an ID, which get away with their lives. So this was like a heavily discussed issue, whether this is meaningful to request IDs. But on the other hand, where there were cases where people flew in, for example, by airplane, destroyed the passport between leaving the airplane and getting to immigration, so they had no ID, and they then just said, well, I'm coming from this and this region, which is a conflict region, to then be eligible for asylum, not to have a passport from a non-war country. This, you can imagine, is a very complex thing anyway. Okay, so, but I came here also to talk a bit about networks. So here are at least first sociograms. What you can see is the network of, where should I start? I should say first what the nodes I've explained to you before. The ties between the nodes, they are based on people mentioning two aspects. So what I collected was a two-mode network consisting of associations and persons. And when you then just reduce this two-mode network to a one-mode network of the associations, you come out with this. Is everybody in here familiar with this transformation of two to one-mode network? You don't have to go into details here. Sit up. Okay. Good. Okay. And what I have displayed here were just ties with a threshold of 9 or more. So all ties represented here were mentioned at least by 10 persons simultaneously. So emotions and result were strongly linked. Image, mood, values, background of migration, they were linked. And also you can a little bit grasp by the strength of the ties how strong these ties are. Okay, so on a first glance, this is wave 1, this is wave 2, then we have wave 3, and between is just like all nodes represented. The layout was chosen so that the nodes not moving around to make it a bit easier to read and look at in this dynamic way. What you can see is, for example, here there was a component, disconnected components in wave 3 as well as in wave 1, while in wave 2 there's just one big component, and it's by far the densest network. So we just have a look at the number of ties within this network. We have 1,500 ties in the first wave, we have 2,000 ties in the second wave, and then it declines again in wave 3. So what does it tell us? We have, when we 2 months in advance, when we ask people what comes to your mind, they have like an average, we get an average feedback of things what comes to their mind. 1 month before the vote, they have a very diverse and big network. Very many things come to their mind, and just after the vote, they can't remember anything. they forget about it. So it was a very interesting finding. For a long time, the theory also based on the assumption that learning, political learning, builds up each other, and it's like a steadily improving. But as you can see here, this kind of knowledge peaks somewhere in the middle of the campaign and then declines. What we have to know is that you, in a Swiss system, you don't have to go there for voting at this specific date. You can vote like in a period of about 6 weeks, also by just sending back the letter. So it might be that people already made up their mind here in wave 2, send off the letter, and because they make their decision and their vote, they're not going to care about it, and then by the end of the campaign in wave 3, they not mentioning any much knowledge here. It's and what I also got pointed to from a friend who's in neuropsychology is that your findings show that people, when they made a decision, when they had recalled information, made a decision, they are more likely then to forget about the whole information they made their decision on. So this is in line with this findings from medicine and medical and psychological research. Okay, as I told you, it is right at the beginning of this whole research project I'm working on, and so I'm still looking and thinking about what are good criteria for describing and interpreting this kind of impersonal knowledge network. What kind of measures would be useful? And so here I don't have like very fancy network statistics, broad. They're just like easy statistics. But I think on this level and on this topic of this kind of network, I think we have to start with this concept first and just apply what we think is really meaningful and helps us to understand the issue. Okay, so first, of course, it's interesting to have a look at the size and the scope of the knowledge network. We can count the nodes. We can count the ties and calculate the density. We can see which kind of aspects are more central than others, which are more triggering probably decisions. We can calculate diversity. And when we ask one person, does this person mention just 3 or 4 different things within one frame, just like thinking within a box and just think about, well, they're coming from Albania, from Romania, from Sri Lanka, and from Somalia, or whether a person is able to connect very different aspects. Well, they're coming from conflict zones. Well, we have a political discussion about that. This has an impact on our society, and so very diverse thinking about issues. So this external-internal index can be helpful, and of course, it's interesting to see, just like with QAP analysis or regressions, to see how similar or different these kind of networks. I'll go through these statistics now. First of all, here is a description about the nodes per person. So we ask people what comes to your mind when you think about. The interviewer, they had like 3 slots to write in something, or what people were mentioning. When people just give one answer, they were asking again, well, you have also other things coming to your mind. If they said no, then we went on with the question. So we had like 3 things in the data set, 3 different entries. However, when we did the recoding, we realized that some of the interviews, they just wrote long sentence in, others just like words, which was a bit difficult to then interpret it. So we had up to 5 different things coded per person. The average, as you can see, is around 2 things coming to your mind. A person who is for the tightening of the Asylum-Law Pro mentions 1.8 things in the first wave, very similar to people who are against the tightening, similar also to a person who changed to Pro, from Comfort to Pro, the other way around, and overall we have an average of 1.7 things people mention. Again, what you can see is that the average is highest here in wave 2 and then declines again in wave 3. Here you have the number of people who were in this specific groups. What I've done then for the further analysis was I concentrate on the 2 groups, those who were clearly for or against the new law. So that means they were stable from the first wave to the last wave. They always said, yeah, I'm going to vote yes. That's going to vote yes. So these people are in here, and people saying no, no, no. They were in the contra group here. And as you can see, these 2 groups have different sizes. There were many more people were for the new law. What I did, I just took a random sample out of this 550 person. I just took a random sample of size 9. Well, when you normally would say random sampling in a network context, it would be like a terrible mistake to do. I think here is absolutely okay because the measurements anyway are random sample and then just combined by the means of this reduction from a 2-mode to a 1-mode.
You know the change in the.
Sorry?
How do you know the change in the first wave?
Oh, that's a change from the first to the third wave. So people who change their mind from the first to the last wave are within that group. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Difference between the groups. Where you can see difference between the groups that are all not significant. Between the waves, they were significant. So people really increased the number of ties here, wave 1 to wave 2, and then it declined significantly also from wave 2 to wave 3. But difference between these groups, these are not significant. Well, of course, it doesn't only count on the nodes and the number of ties. The whole network heavily depends on how these ties are distributed on them. So if we assume that we have 10 persons, 10 measurements, and we ask them what comes to your mind, and in situation A, there are 5 people saying just, well, nothing comes to my mind. No free word association. And another 5 persons say 4 things each. What we end up is with this 20 nodes, we have 30 ties among these 20 nodes. When we ask another 10 people, situation B, and all of them just mention 2 things. What we end up then is with, again, 20 nodes, we have 10 ties. So the distribution of where people, the average of nodes within these groups is not the only thing which is of interest. We also have to look at the distribution of the frequencies of how many nodes people mention. And of course, also the time interpretation is of interest here. Again, two situations. We have, on one hand side, we could have the situation where we have 10 ties among these 20 nodes, and they're all connect this aspect up here, so just half of them. And another situation, again, 10 times 20 nodes, we have a very different picture. So I was thinking a long time about what kind of networks should I interpret. Should I just interpret the whole network as a collective, or should I apply a certain threshold to the tie strength? Because you can argue, well, if there is a tie in this network that just can be there more or less by random, it's just like the connection deriving from one person mentioning these two aspects. So if this person wouldn't be in there in your survey, then this connection wouldn't be there in your data. And so I tried to apply different thresholds. So okay, just have a look at the networks which have the ties which have a strength of 2 or higher, or as you've seen before in the visualization, I applied threshold 9 to have a more general knowledge network. I think those aspects are really important. Probably it's more when we go to a substantial level, to also a qualitative interpretation of which nodes are in there, how they are specifically connected. It's probably more meaningful to apply a kind of threshold to this data to become a clearer picture, to reduce information. However, if we want to measure something like the scope of this knowledge networks, if we go for quantitative interpretation, we probably shouldn't apply any kind of threshold, because otherwise we just miss out all this information here. Okay, here's again visualization, just to give you some funny pictures in between. Here now there's the networks with pro and confa. Pro means tightening of the, and also you can see what the coding scheme was. The green referred to referendum, the red to society, candidates, regulations, and again, here you can see dynamics. I think I missed to include here like a start picture so you can see where it starts. This was the last wave, first wave, second wave, last wave. Wave 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into detail here. It's a little bit, anyway. Further thoughts on the connectedness as a criteria of interpersonal knowledge. If we assume we have now measurements from 5 different persons, they all mention 3 things. Displayed by these triangles here, we can have 2 possibilities. Either that 5 persons all mention the same 3 things. So what we would come up as this in-person knowledge network will just like be that triangle. Other situation is that it is neatly connected, so this person is mentioning something that this person is also mentioning, so we have a linking pin. So we have like a really nice connected network, or the third possibility, they all mention 3 things, but neither of them is linked to any of the other. So we can have very different pictures here. Well, what does us say this criteria? What does this now mean in I mean, we have to think about what kind of networks would we like to have for political knowledge. Or what is like from a normative perspective, what is a good network? Since this is a rather new approach, we have to make some assumption. What would be good? What would we want this network to look like? And there are different things we could argue. For example, we could argue, okay, well, this kind of network, which is just really redundant, all people mention the same few things, it's rather stable. Right? Stable network helps us to interpret the whole thing. Probably when we have a network like this, we probably won't have this dramatic change of opinion and voting behavior like we had in the minaret law. We could also interpret this kind of picture as, well, we have here a heavy mainstreaming, so people that just come up with the same ideas. They're not like thinking out of the box. Maybe they're all watching the same TV station, so they really got mainstreamed in their thinking. So here we have we'll find something like this. We have a maximum of mainstreaming. In this case, we have a maximum of scope. Not connected at all, but very, very diverse, very pluralistic situation here. And here, if everything is somehow connected to each other, this would be a very nice network from point of view from a deliberative perspective. So people would be able to pick up an idea from a person and then go on with another. We assume that 5 persons would come together in a room and discuss about this issue on asylum seekers. In this situation, they would probably all agree within a minute. There are 3 things. Well, yeah, there are too many. They should go home, and it's bad for our society. Okay? Or maybe that they won't have very positive things, of course. Their cultural enrichment. They provide us with interesting they put laborers and so forth. In the middle position here, 5 persons in one room discussing about the issue. They would probably more go like, well, I have this, I think about this. Another person would say, well, I don't think about completely other things. So that wouldn't be probably not that much of like a flow within this. In this case, we could assume, this is a hypothesis, still has to be tested, that if this person here starts off with this argument, goes on with the second argument, another person would pick up this argument and say, well, but we also have to think about this, and so forth. So this is one of the points. I think it's interesting to look at these knowledge networks as a network and not just as isolated measures. Okay, so when we look at the scope and connectedness, the scope means how many of the possible total aspects within this topic were mentioned by people. As you can see, here is 28, that's the maximum possible in wave 1, 28 as well in wave 2, and 30 in wave 3. This is because in wave 3 there were these 2 additional aspects of the results and the impact of the results included. Before, in the first 2 waves, we coded just these 28 different aspects. And here the scope, then I just calculated the ratio between the nodes included in this network of the specific subgroups divided by the maximum possible number. So what we see here is that the proponents for this tightening of asylum law, the right-wing people, they have a smaller scope than the left-wing people, which mention just all aspects possible of this topic. They're here in the last wave, they miss one out. Otherwise, they just get like 100%. So they really use the possibility of this. With respect to the ties, this is just the density, including or excluding the diagonal. Here it is very stable. Well, it peaks again in wave 2, but the difference here between the groups there is really like very, very little. When we look at the centrality measures, and here I have the closeness centrality measured, and just displayed the top 5 aspects, which are the most central aspects for the people. When we look at the proponents of the tightening, then we can see, well, misuse is on top, selection problem, misuse is here on the third place, and misuse again. Numbers of asylum seekers, affectance with society, delinquency, so all very negative aspects. When we look here at the other group who were against the tightening of the law, we have on top in all 3 waves, the most central aspects were the image mood values, which included mood like, well, there is not like a good something like a good mood in the society. I think people don't like asylum seekers. That's one of the answers in here on values. Well, I think it's problematic from a human rights perspective and so forth. Treatment and the execution of the how they get selected, how they get treated in Switzerland, how they get rejected and so forth. Background of migration, topic characteristics here, the political players. All in all, if you have a closer look at these 2 things, is that people against the new law, they had, which are more or less also there at the left, people, they have a more like a meta thinking about the issue. They also think about, well, about the whole process, about the political process, and make arguments. Well, this guy is just like pushing always this wrong argument of misuse, and they really have this more simple argument issues which are central in the knowledge networks. Well, when we this is just to explain what the EI index is. For those who are familiar with it, EI index means external internal index. So if you just order the nodes according to their color, to their frame, then you would count how many ties are internally within the same frame, how many ties are internally in this other frame, and how many ties are between different frames, between different colors. And what it tells us is whether people are able to think out of the box. You know, as I mentioned before, combine very different aspects of this political issue, or whether they just think in a circle, so to speak. Well, what we have here as a result, there are the indexes are Rescaled index, taking into account the size of the network and the density of the network, and it is with a permutation test. All these measures here doesn't differ significantly from what you would expect from random. So this is not like a very strong finding for, well, people just think within the box, out of the box. But what we can see interestingly here is that it declines. The index declines over time from wave 1 to wave 3. Okay. I don't think what's the time? What did I? 8 more minutes. Okay, that's just perfect. What I have to end with, I think, from the result side, is the QAP analysis. And I think we have here two interesting things to see. Is first of all that this knowledge network seem to evolve based on the previous one. So we have a stronger correlation between wave 1 and wave 2, a correlation of 0.5. Then we have a correlation from wave 1 to wave 3. If we wouldn't have this like higher correlation between neighboring waves, I would have doubt whether this is a meaningful way to analyze this network. But as you can see, it seems like one network is somehow based on the network before. What we also can see is that those are quite similarly correlated. So we have correlations of 0.5 and 0.4 here. These are the important ones, I would argue. For the proponents, we have correlation of 0.5 and 0.3 here for the people against. So this is not like a big difference, even though all this correlation according to the permutation test are significant. I can show you. Oh, and here, what is here? Yeah, of course, this almost I forgot about it. There's the correlation between the proponents and the opponents. So how similar are the knowledge networks for those for and against the new law? And as you can see, this correlation drops to insignificant value. Here's the P for this correlation in wave 3. So that means that the knowledge networks in the first two waves are, well, somehow correlated for these two groups, but in the third wave it's not connected anymore. Really get split up. So this, I think, is an interesting finding for that part. What I have here, and this is just to illustrate how difficult it is for me at the moment to also interpret these findings, because there's no like benchmark I could compare to. There are no other analyses I'm aware of I could refer to and interpret this. So also did this for another topic. Another vote in Switzerland was about naturalization, that it become a Swiss. And I haven't compared here the proponents and opponents, but I have compared here like education levels, low, medium, high, and elite educated people. And as you can see here, the correlations here are much higher. We have here correlations mostly around 0.8. Both networks are heavily correlated. So much, much stronger correlated than here in this network. The only thing which stands out here is that the elite people, and here there were just two measurements, wave 1 and wave 2. The elite, they seem to learn something or change at least their network over time here. So this is a bit of a thing I'm still working on, and to try to apply this technique to other issues to get a feeling of what it is all about. So coming to the end and try to wrap up my findings. The size and scope of the networks. Well, the number of nodes per person peaks in wave 2. Wave 2, they have about 2.4 things coming to their mind when they just have to say something about Asylum-Seekers. And what we also have seen that the impersonal knowledge networks for the conflict groups which were against the new law has a larger scope. Also, specifically in wave 2 and wave 1 and wave 2. Connectedness, density, number of ties, it peaks also in wave 2. and we have no difference between pro and con. Accessibility of aspects, centrality. The pro side, there we have aspects in there like misuse, delinquency, impact on society. On the contra side, we have more like meta aspects, image, mood, values, topic characteristic, political process. What we have for the external internal index, findings are not significant, but interestingly, they're declining over time here. And the QAP correlation, we have significant correlations of pro and contra in wave 1 and 2, but not in wave 3. And we also have an indicator for a steady evolution of these networks, wave 1, 2. So, arguments for a network perspective. Why, I think, is it meaningful to think about political opinion, public opinion, political knowledge in a network perspective? Well, first of all, political decisions and political knowledge is strongly correlated and or interrelated with social networks. We have these classic findings also, for example, from Rescaled 60 years ago. People not only make up their mind just based on information from news media or by discussing with politicians. No, they make the decision within the social networks. There's a lot of interpersonal communication going on. And second argument for a network perspective, neither the storage, the elaboration, and the recall of knowledge is well represented by like hierarchical structures. It's more like a network. When we look at today's theories and also empirical findings, how our brain is built, how our brain operates, we all come across the network perspective. So we have connected ideas there as well. So what do I propose is a methodological approach to measure knowledge, which can be on political knowledge as well as any other kind of knowledge, I think. It's based on a pre-word association of individuals. We somehow measure the top-of-mind aspect of an issue. This takes also, as I said, into account the nature of individual thinking and knowledge storage. We can aggregate this individual measurements by combining these to bigger networks using the common things as linking things. And what I think is a very important aspect always when we do network analysis is it is practical. Practicability is given here. We can combine this approach with like classic random sampling, classic survey design, which I think is a huge advantage here. Okay, what's next? Of course, going more into detail with the data set I just showed you. I have also other data sets. An example I showed you on naturalization, also have measurements on corporate tax, on countries. In the realm of the Soccer World Championship, I ask people what comes to your mind when you think about Italy, for example. So play around with that as well. Also have in the area of risk communication, asking people what comes to your mind thinking about green biotechnology. And with adolescents, I try to do something similar on substance and substance abuse. So this is with the outline of where I would like to go. And now I'm really happy to take your questions and comments.
People have been able to make sense of the political shortcuts people use as parties. And so I imagine that the parties are taking positions on these referenda as well. So maybe all somebody needs to know is, I favor this party, done. Right? So how does that shortcut
You're absolutely right. The interesting thing is that, well, first point, the political area and party system in Switzerland is much more diverse than it is here with like Democrats and Republicans. So, and there are always changing coalitions between these parties. So it's not so easy to make these shortcuts for people, even though they, of course, they do it. I think it's a very, I don't have the idea that I can explain political behavior completely by this approach. That's out of my scope. I hope to understand better how people make up their mind, how the media also have an influence on people. And I probably should take into account this kind of aspect. As you can see, I've been controlled for also for gender or whatever, all other kind of things what they would think are important for political decisions. So certainly this is an important issue. What is interestingly, when you have to give votes on very complex things, we had a vote on biotechnological moratorium. So people had to vote on a moratorium. What's a moratorium? Sometimes these laws are quite complicated formulated or have like a misleading framing. And at some point, and for example, in this moratorium means that we have like a protection time. We're not going to allow certain research on biotechnology within the next 5 years. And what was it about? And research showed that 30% of the voters, they actually give their vote to the wrong side because they just thought it would be like the other way around. And so even though there's shortcuts and moratorium or something like the brand of a new law is one of these shortcuts. These are sometimes very misleading and also can cause confusion. So all in all, would you say it's a meaningful approach, or is it like trying to invent something which is really useless? How do you feel about this idea of combining individuals and free word association of individuals to bigger networks of knowledge? Yeah.
Knowledge. I was wondering if you might be more accurate to call this kind of networks instead of knowledge.
I did say that, or you? Whether it's more accurate to call them opinion networks? Well, as I started, I'm not yet sure whether I should talk about knowledge or opinion or whether it is all the same.
I'm not that familiar with
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Technology.
Yeah.
But this kind of opinions and associations when they're talking about a certain topic, at least as far as I know, they're not networks. At least in the publications I have read.
Yeah. Okay.
Computational management journals. I'm not that familiar with the sociology journals.
Okay. Well, that's a good hint because the background of this research was knowledge gap research. So the classic research tradition in mass media science that you assume when you have a campaign, you have difference between the high educated and low educated people in the beginning. So the high educated people would know more about like in really classic sense of expertise, a factual knowledge. They would have higher knowledge in the beginning than low educated people. And then while you provide more and more information, in many cases this gap between the high and low educated increases. And the background of this research project we conducted is to analyze whether we have an increasing or decreasing knowledge gap. And and there we really had this factual knowledge questions in there. Well, do you know which party is for this law? Do you know which person is involved? What are the consequences of this law and this decision? Really like a long catalog of this factual, really knowledge. And I try to approach this area of knowledge by more including the opinions, but you're probably right that it might be misleading for people talking about knowledge networks and presenting this kind of things. So you all wouldn't have attended the lecture saying me public opinion networks, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Going along, the question was, what type of topic around? I think it's an interesting question. Is the agenda setting question, which is what's the most important issue facing? And it seems to me that you're getting somewhat of similar data from that. And I'm wondering if you've considered comparing to agenda settings, but also, to what extent does the stuff that you're getting, it's basically how you describe it as like top of the mind association at the moment, and how much does that really reflect the media agenda? Do you think that it?
Well, I mean, that's a hypothesis still to be tested. I think that the neat thing about network analysis is that you can apply to different things by semantic networks analysis of text. You could come up with similar kind of networks and see whether how strongly these are correlated of this pre-word association and what you get from content analysis. In fact, this is one of the next steps I plan to conduct within the coming years, because this long-term project to then include this kind of networks. I would argue yes, that's my hypothesis, and also that the link to agendas, I think, is. I think that it's when you think about classic research areas in mass comm, you have links to, as I mentioned, to knowledge gap research. You have links to agenda setting. You have it's also a way about thinking of framing. So you have, I think, very strong theories and research traditions to refer to that you like.
But have you currently looked actually at the people who changed their mind? Like you mentioned that you were looking at the people who were pro and con comparing them. And let's just see, are the people who changed from pro to con, did their network, look more like a con, even though they said pro, or, you kind of find these things. I realize, to do that, but, it seems like we tend to study, especially in political knowledge testing, the people that have knowledge, right? Who have strong opinions and who really aren't the targets of inspiration. Like they're not changing their opinion. But they know the left, right? But the changing people, I think, understudied in general.
Yeah.
Because they're harder. Because they don't map onto our deep ideas of what in the health market.
Absolutely right. Thank you for this comment. I think on based on this thinking, it's actually more surprising to find dynamics within the networks of stable people. Actually, they should have like more stable networks when they were really stable. So it's actually surprising to find this kind of dynamics. As he assumed correctly, the sample size of the people changing their mind is just very slow, very low here. I think around 70 or 90 persons. You have to go back in the slide, and this is really too little to have like build up this impersonal networks. That's a bit of a problem. I would be nice actually. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your attention and discussion.